In this video, we head into the sun-soaked deserts and rugged mountains of Arizona, a place known for its rich history and tantalizing tales of hidden fortunes. From legendary lost mines to secret caches left behind by outlaws, Arizona has captivated treasure seekers for generations. In this compilation, we've gathered some of the most intriguing treasure stories from the Grand Canyon State, with each tale adapted from classic treasure hunting magazines. These stories offer a glimpse into the mystery and adventure that define Arizona's past. Enjoy. Arizona's Sycamore Canyon presents a formidable challenge to even the most intrepid treasure hunters. It boasts a legendary Spanish gold mine yielding ore valued up to $8,000 per ton, a hidden spring producing gold nuggets the size of beans, numerous unexplored caves and Indian ruins, and an abundance of Indian artifacts strewn across the ground, all potentially concealing untold mineral wealth. Despite the wealth waiting to be unearthed, Sycamore Canyon remains largely untapped due to its rugged and inaccessible terrain. Situated approximately 12 miles northwest of Clarksdale, Arizona, the canyon stretches some 30 miles from mouth to head, with a winding course of around 100 miles. The canyon, along with its myriad side canyons, is virtually impassable on horseback, and even wheeled vehicles such as jeeps find no purchase. Attempts to land helicopters in the canyon have been thwarted by the lack of suitable landing spots, while dense brush and timber impede progress on foot, often requiring travelers to crawl on hands and knees through thickets. The climate in Sycamore Canyon ranges from mild to extreme, with scorching summers and frigid winters, including substantial snowfall. However, the spring and fall seasons offer mild temperatures and a consistent water supply, with numerous springs dotting the landscape, including the one rumored to contain bean-sized gold nuggets. The canyon is home to diverse wildlife, including bears, mountain lions, deer, wild turkeys, various bird species, and a healthy population of rattlesnakes. The discovery of gold in Sycamore Canyon dates back to 1583, when Col Antonio de Espejo and his party of Spaniards first stumbled upon it. However, it wasn't until 1853 that proof of the mine's existence reached the American settlers, when prospector Clifford Haynes, fleeing from Mojave Indians, chanced upon the remnants of a small village within the canyon. Despite this discovery, subsequent attempts to organize prospecting expeditions were met with little interest. In 1878, a group of prospectors led by John T. Squires, armed with a map, ventured into the canyon and established a camp near the old village, where they began mining for gold. However, their efforts were soon interrupted by a war party of Apaches, underscoring the ongoing challenges of exploring and exploiting the riches hidden within Sycamore Canyon. One fateful morning, a war party of Apaches descended upon them, claiming the lives of 3 men, while the survivors fled back to New Mexico, never to return. For 18 years, the old Spanish mine in Sycamore Canyon lay silent and deserted until another fortuitous encounter. In 1896, a man known as Bear Hunter Howard, famed for his prowess in hunting bears, stumbled upon the mine while on a bear hunting expedition. Within a nearby cave, he discovered 2 weathered books penned in Spanish, which he later displayed in Flagstaff. Returning to Sycamore Canyon the following year to further explore the mine, Howard failed to relocate it. Despite dedicating 8 more years to the search before his passing, the mine eluded him. Even his friend Milt Farrell spent a significant portion of the 1920s and 1930s in fruitless pursuit of the elusive treasure. Since 1896, no one has laid eyes on the lost Spanish mine, although traces of rich gold ore found in the canyon are believed to originate from it. In 1941, Cliff Nelson unearthed $1,900 worth of gold from the cracks of an old Spanish arrastre in the canyon, sparking renewed interest in the elusive mine. Despite numerous explorers scouring Sycamore Canyon since then, few have stayed long enough to discover anything beyond occasional traces of gold ore, likely remnants from Spanish expeditions centuries ago. Indian Jim, a full-blooded Apache known for his love of whiskey, caused a sensation in Clarksdale and Jerome in the 1920s when he cashed in a sack of gold nuggets, some as large as beans, for $800. Despite persistent inquiries, Indian Jim remained tight-lipped about the source of his gold, hinting only that it came from a spring in Sycamore Canyon. Various theories have emerged regarding the origins of the large gold nuggets traded by Geronimo and his renegade Apaches for weapons and whiskey. Yet, Sycamore Canyon is conspicuously absent from these discussions, despite the canyon serving as a frequent hideout for Geronimo's band until around 1876. Indian Jim's legendary spring could very well be the elusive Geronimo's lost gold mine. Given that Indian Jim was quite young at the time, he would have been young enough to have been a member of Geronimo's band. This offers a plausible explanation for his knowledge of the spring teeming with golden nuggets. While this is just speculation, it adds an intriguing twist to the story. This is as much as we know about the Spanish mine and the gold-rich spring in Sycamore Canyon from historical accounts. Everything I've shared here is based on factual records. Now, I'd like to share some of my personal experiences from my many trips into Sycamore Canyon. As a prospector looking for valuable minerals, a geologist seeking noteworthy rock specimens and fossils, and an enthusiast of Indian artifacts, I've been to the canyon several times, always on the lookout for lost mines and gold-laden springs. I can say with complete confidence that Sycamore Canyon is not a place to go alone. It's really easy to get lost in there. You can easily take the wrong turn and find yourself in a dangerous spot. Moreover, the rugged terrain poses numerous hazards, and cave exploration can be particularly treacherous. My home is in Oak Creek Canyon, just a stone's throw from Sycamore Canyon, with their headwaters nearly converging. On each trip, I've made some valuable discoveries. For instance, on my second expedition, I found a huge meteorite that weighed between 4 and 5 tons and was worth thousands of dollars. I tried my best, but I couldn't break off a chunk with my prospector's pick. It seemed as resilient as a rubber ball. I've found traces of flake gold in several springs, but I've yet to find any nuggets. I've found pieces of gold ore that assayed from $300 to $800 per ton, but I haven't found the vein they come from. I've explored lots of caves and found lots of Indian artifacts, including pots, bowls, and pottery, with really intricate designs. I've also found lots of Indian ruins and cliff dwellings, many of which have loads of artifacts. However, there's a big problem in getting these valuable relics out of Sycamore Canyon. When you're several miles from the nearest road and the terrain is impassable for vehicles, you're left with no choice but to leave behind the treasures you've discovered. While I've made do with less food from my pack to accommodate ore samples or small artifacts, a well-organized expedition with at least 6 people who can handle the harsh terrain and climate is essential for a prolonged search. With a bit of patience and some good old-fashioned systematic exploration, I'm pretty sure we can not only rediscover the lost mines, but we might even find some new, lucrative deposits. There's no doubt about it. The evidence of gold in Sycamore Canyon, along with its other treasures, is undeniable. You can get to the canyon by taking a well-maintained dirt road from Clarkdale, Arizona, which leads directly to its mouth. Any vehicle can get you to the road, but from there on it's a hike. Sycamore Canyon is a rugged wilderness teeming with beauty, mystery, wildlife, and untold treasures, all just waiting to be discovered. Startled by the sand kicked up from my boots, a zebra-tailed lizard swiftly arched its tail over its back, balancing on its hind legs, and blurred into motion as it scurried for safety. Despite the early morning hour, the sun already bore down relentlessly, typical of the unforgiving climate in the Kofa Mountains, located 86 miles northeast of Yuma, Arizona. Little did I anticipate that this serene moment would soon spiral into a tale of a treasure hunt turned wild goose chase and back again. As a truck approached, churning up a sandstorm in its wake, it came to a halt nearby, its driver grinning out the window. Assessing them as friendly enough, I acknowledged their inquiry about prospecting in the area with a nod. "Now and then," I replied. Their interest piqued. They asked for directions to Middle Well. Puzzled, I racked my memory. For years, my survival in this desolate desert had relied on knowledge of its wells, springs, and waterholes, yet Middle Well was unfamiliar territory. Expressing their determination, the driver, Vern, and his companion, Stan, disclosed their extensive journey to find this elusive spot. Intrigued, I offered to consult my collection of maps back at my cabin. After introductions were exchanged, we embarked towards my humble abode. Once there, amidst the comforting aroma of brewing coffee, I retrieved a stack of dusty maps, spreading them across the table. Inch by inch, we scoured the maps in search of Middlewell, to no avail. "Could it have another name?" I inquired. "No," Vern asserted. "It's known as Middlewell near the King Mine." Gesturing towards the towering granite peak outside, I indicated, "The King lies just beyond that mountain. Though unfamiliar with Middlewell, I have a hunch of its possible whereabouts." I allowed them a moment to ponder. Vern exchanged a subtle glance with his partner, receiving a nearly imperceptible nod. "If you can guide us to that well," Vern proposed, "we'll strike a deal with you." "Count me in," I replied with interest. "A quarter share of whatever we unearth, $50,000 worth of gold at the very least." Vern sweetened the offer. As we topped off our coffee cups, I recounted the tale of the Castle Dome strike. Upon hearing rumors of this supposed historic silver bonanza, I promptly set out to explore the Castle Dome Mountains. Along the way, I crossed paths with an aged prospector, and together we traversed the rugged terrain for several days. During one evening's conversation about desert water sources, he casually mentioned an ancient abandoned well nestled between the Castle Dome and Kofa Mountains, a name unfamiliar to me until that moment. "That might be Middlewell," I speculated. "If so, it's farther south than you initially thought, nestled by the Castle Dome Mountains." Retrieving another map from an orange crate, I spread it out. Before I could fully unfurl it, Stan pointed emphatically, exclaiming, "There it is!" In bold lettering, just as the old prospector had described, Middlewell was marked just north of a sandy road that traversed the space between the two mountain ranges. With newfound clarity, we swiftly piled into the truck and set off. As the wheels began to roll, Vern and Stan shared the intriguing backstory of Middlewell. It all began in a North Carolina tavern where they stumbled upon a drunken patron rambling about hidden gold. Though their interaction with him yielded little, they were intrigued enough to forge a friendship. Subsequently, they discovered a retired prospector in Phoenix who allegedly possessed knowledge of a significant gold stash. Determined, they boarded a plane for Phoenix that very night. Their encounter with the old prospector unraveled a tale from the late 1800s when the King Mine reigned as Arizona's premier gold producer, alongside the equally prosperous North Star Mine. Wagon loads of precious ore embarked on treacherous journeys across the desert to reach the smelters in Gila City. However, water scarcity threatened these arduous hauls, prompting the mine owners to enlist a dowser. After an exhaustive 2-week search, he led a party to a barren spot on the flats. They began to excavate, and as anticipated, water was discovered. Situated strategically as the midpoint for the ore wagon's journey, it earned the moniker Middlewell. A blacksmith and his son were contracted to tend the well, offering water to passing teams, performing blacksmithing tasks, and providing a respite for weary drivers. A modest one-room cabin and workshop were swiftly erected. The blacksmith and his son toiled tirelessly without complaint, their diligence overshadowing the small amount of high-grade ore the father surreptitiously skimmed from the wagons while the drivers rested or dined. He secreted the pilfered ore in a cellar beneath the blacksmith shop's floor, unbeknownst to his son. With dreams of retiring lavishly in Mexico upon the mine's eventual depletion, the father's aspirations were dashed when he succumbed to a fatal heart attack at Middlewell, long before the mine's reserves were exhausted. In his will, he bequeathed a pistol with silver pearl handles to his son. However, the son's life took a darker turn when he fatally assaulted a miner in a Yuma bar, leading to a life sentence in prison. His attorney accepted the pistol as partial payment. As fate would have it, the son perished from tuberculosis in prison around the time the King Mine ceased operations. The pistol's whereabouts remained unknown until it resurfaced in the possession of a retired prospector in Phoenix in the early 1960s. Years later, while the prospector was oiling the pistol, he discovered a loose screw in one handle. As he attempted to tighten it, the screw broke off, revealing a hidden compartment containing a weathered piece of paper, a crude map with scant sentences recounting the tale of Middlewell and the stolen gold. At 85 years old and too frail to embark on a treasure hunt himself, the prospector shared his story with acquaintances, garnering little serious attention until Vern and Stan appeared. Eager to assist in the search for the lost gold, The prospector agreed to aid them in exchange for funds to ensure a dignified funeral for himself. Here is where my involvement began. Guiding us to a spot midway between the Castle Dome Mountains and the King Mine, I directed the truck towards two prominent peaks in the Kofas to the north. "Keep heading straight toward those peaks," I instructed. "Middlewell should be about 4 miles ahead, aligned with those mountaintops." Navigating over the flats, through dry washes, past greasewood clusters and around colossal boulders, we suddenly heard Stan's exclamation, "To the left over there, I think I see it." Arriving at the site of the blacksmith shop, we commenced our search. Employing metal detectors, we unearthed remnants of hand-forged tools, wagon components, and scrap metal. All that remained of the cabin were scattered foundation rocks, remnants of the floor, and fragments of wood. The well itself proved shallow, only reaching a depth of 20 feet before being filled in. Despite 3 days of relentless digging under the scorching sun, our discoveries were meager, a lone $half and dime. Disheartened, we called off the search on the 4th morning. "If the blacksmith buried ore, it's certainly not here," Stan remarked. Vern speculated that the ore might have been concealed within the well, necessitating expensive heavy equipment to retrieve it. And with that, my encounter with Vern and Stan concluded. However, my connection with Middlewell did not end there. A week later, I stepped into the library at the University of Arizona in Tucson and requested a copy of Arizona Place Names and Things. After flipping through the pages for a few moments, I stumbled upon the entry for Middlewell and let out a string of expletives. It turned out that Middlewell was actually dug by a rancher, not by the proprietors of the King Mine. Moreover, it was excavated several years after the closure of the King Mine. Our hopes of uncovering the smithy's stolen ore were shattered. We had been pursuing a futile fantasy all along. Weeks passed before a realization struck me. There was indeed treasure at Middlewell, albeit not the gold sought by Stan and Vern. This revelation resonated with Doug and Sue Widmer, old acquaintances residing in Minneapolis. Upon sharing the discovery with them over the same maps I had shown Vern and Stan, they swiftly agreed to join the pursuit. Middlewell might not have ties to the King Mine, but it stood witness to the passage of ore wagons before its excavation. These wagons traversed remote desert terrain, leaving behind discarded items that remained untouched. As avid bottle collectors, Doug and Sue grasped the significance of this potential trove. Setting out from the remnants of the old mine, now a cluster of dilapidated structures engulfed by sand, we embarked in a jeep along the path once traversed by the wagons en route to Gila City. Some sections of the wagon ruts were still discernible, while in others we relied on speculation to determine their direction. Numerous bottles littered the surface: pale blue, deep purple, whiskey, beer, medicine, and even miniature opium bottles. In total, we uncovered over 200 bottles dating back to the 1800s, estimated by Doug and Sue to be valued at around $1,200 to collectors. Among the artifacts were wagon wheels, yoke components, knives, hatchet heads, belt buckles, tobacco tins, and even fragments of a stagecoach. Yet the most remarkable find was half of a wooden airplane propeller. Despite scouring a wide area, we found no evidence of a crashed plane. However, the flight path the plane must have taken aligned with routes frequently used by smugglers traveling between the United States and Mexico. This raised the tantalizing possibility: could there be a cargo of gold or something equally precious, hidden amidst the vast expanse of the desert? Near the ghost town of Stanton, Arizona, 80 miles west of Phoenix, one of the world's largest untapped gold deposits lies buried, with estimates valuing it between $350 million and $2 billion. Stanton was once a thriving mining town that struck it rich in the early 1860s, but today, it's little more than a few aging wooden structures, a lone caretaker, and the persistent wind from the surrounding mountains. Just 50 to 70 feet below, mineralogists believe there's enough gold to make someone extremely wealthy. But the challenge is getting to it. Glenn Walker, an engineer with Arizona's Department of Mineral Resources, doesn't mince words. There's a lot of gold down there, but nobody knows how much. If you pan after a rainstorm, you'll find gold traces in almost every pan. The obstacle? Enormous boulders block access to the gold-rich bedrock. If someone could move those boulders and reach the water supply below, they'd have enough wealth to buy all the oil in Saudi Arabia. Stanton and nearby Rich Hill were part of the Arizona Territory back in the 1800s, when the region was remote, with poor roads and little communication. When the Civil War began, troops were pulled east, and Apache leaders like Cochise saw an opportunity, launching attacks on settlers and forcing the closure of mines. In 1858, gold was discovered along the Gila River, attracting miners and prospectors who earned between $30 and $125 daily. When those claims dried up, many flocked to new gold sites along the Colorado River, including La Paz. This gold camp quickly grew with saloons, trading posts, and gambling houses, and friendly Apache groups came to town to trade. Stories of richer deposits further inland, shared by Apaches, stirred excitement. A prospector named Abraham Harlow Peoples was especially intrigued. Peoples, a North Carolina native and Mexican War veteran, had found success in mining during the 1849 gold rush and decided to explore Arizona. In April 1863, he reached Fort Yuma and assembled a group, including the knowledgeable guide Pauline Weaver. Weaver, a skilled frontiersman with Cherokee ancestry, knew the land and local cultures well, and guided Peoples and his team on their search for Arizona's legendary riches. Their journey marked the beginning of one of Arizona's most celebrated gold-seeking expeditions, a pursuit that continues to tempt treasure hunters today. The Peoples Party journeyed north along the Colorado River, reaching La Paz, where Weaver had previously struck gold. There, they saw dozens of Mexicans panning for gold along the riverbanks. The group then moved east across the Plamosa Mountains and into Cullen Valley. Near a mountain range, they spotted a herd of antelope. Peoples recalled, "I shot 3 antelope and we named the spot Antelope Mountain. While the meat dried, a few of us decided to go prospecting nearby. We hit gold in the creek bed on the very first day. While they were mining, 4 Mexican members of the party discovered their horses had wandered off. Searching for a better vantage point, one climbed Antelope Mountain, going all the way to the summit. There, in a rocky saddle, he found crevices overflowing with gold nuggets. Thrilled by the discovery, he gathered as many nuggets as he could carry and hurried down to tell the others. At dawn, the entire group climbed to the top. The mountain basin was scattered with large gold nuggets, and crevices were packed with yellow ore. The find was so astounding that they named the mountain Rich Hill. Peoples noted, "The ground was so rich that with just 3 of us scratching around, we collected $1,800 in nuggets by evening. This was when gold sold at about $16 an ounce. One account claims the group gathered $7,000 in gold before breakfast on their first morning. By the end of the month, over $250,000 worth of nuggets and dust had been collected, most of it with butcher knives and tin cups. When food and ammunition ran low, they headed to Maricopa Wells, a small station near the Salt River. There, they met Jack Swilling, who would later help found Phoenix. Swilling joined them, and soon, the area was bustling with prospectors staking claims. Mike Goldwater, the grandfather of Barry Goldwater, opened a store in the growing camp. The Peoples Party was pulling in an average of 25 pounds of gold per week, with stories spreading as far as San Francisco. One day, a young Mexican miner found a nugget weighing over 3 pounds, igniting excitement in the camp. Newspapers like the San Francisco Daily Alta began reporting regularly on Rich Hill's gold rush. Among the visitors was William Ury from Tucson, who wrote a letter to the Daily Alta describing his experience. "I saw 10 men on top of a mountain between Antelope Peak and Indian Gulch, gathering gold as if it were pebbles. With just butcher knives, they collected 10 pounds in 2 hours. Ury tried his hand at gold picking and managed to gather $75 worth of gold in half an hour. During his 4-day stay, Ury observed the party consistently gathering about $1,500 worth of gold daily, with nearby prospectors also pulling in impressive amounts. A La Paz merchant, Mr. Landsberger, reported seeing several miners bringing in significant sums. One Mr. Weber with 12 pounds, a Mexican named Redondo with 8, and others with nearly 100 ounces in total. The Daily Alta was captivated by the gold rush in Arizona. In its October 16, 1863 issue, the paper reported, 2 men named Bryant and Halcomb, employing 6 workers with rockers for over a month, pulled out between $10,000 and $12,000 in gold dust. Even the local Apache community found ways to profit. A reporter noted that the Apaches, acting like savvy businessmen, sold bundles of dry grass for $1 each, only to set them ablaze if buyers tried to haggle, ensuring they'd pay the full price next time. However, tensions soon flared. Goods began disappearing, and settlers suspected the Apaches. One morning, 2 Apaches arrived in Weaver, and when miners confronted them about the missing items, a scuffle broke out. Both Apaches were killed and the fragile peace between the settlers and the Apache people shattered. Raids followed, with horses, mules, and supplies vanishing. In March 1864, Tonto Apaches ambushed 3 miners in Sycamore Canyon and killed 5 Mexican farmers shortly after. Despite the hostilities, the Apaches occasionally showed a lighter side. In one instance, they ambushed 3 Mexican miners on their way home with 7 loaded burros. After disarming the men and taking their supplies, the Apache leader, speaking fluent Spanish, told them to return to Sonora and bring more burros for the Apaches. By early 1865, Rich Hill's gold started to thin out. The Daily Alta reported, "The great Weaver diggings seem exhausted, with only a few Mexicans dry washing for the meager remains." Over the next 70 years, only a few prospectors scratched a living from the area. In 1935, mining engineer Fred B. Peel conducted an extensive survey on foot, covering over 2,100 miles. His letter to Oro Seco Lantid noted, "I found unusually good gold values in almost every sample, with some spots yielding as much as $1.50 per cubic yard." Additional studies showed promise. W.A. Farish reported values ranging from 30 cents to 1.47 per cubic yard, while engineer W.L. Leland advised his firm to dig deeper beneath the false bedrock for potentially higher yields. In 1951, consultant Guy C. Riddell conducted a thorough examination and made a stunning claim. He believed that the Rich Hill and Weaver Creek placers held the highest concentrations of gold he'd encountered. He estimated between 100 million and 750 million cubic yards of gravel packed with valuable gold deposits. This was potentially monumental. If Riddell was correct, the nuggets found at Rich Hill were just the beginning. What lay beneath could be one of the richest untapped gold deposits in the world. Later reports echoed this optimism. San Francisco placer operator W.L. Leland estimated a substantial deposit along Weaver Creek, and an engineer for the U.S. Mining and Smelting Corp. proposed that ancient river channels below the area might be incredibly rich, if accessible. Geologist John M. Nicole developed a theory to explain Rich Hill's gold concentration, suggesting that geological forces created a unique deposit that had only been partially uncovered by early miners. This finding continues to inspire interest in the Weaver District's untold riches. Geologist John M. Nicole theorized that the lower end of Antelope Gulch was once part of an ancient valley, eventually filled by volcanic eruptions that blocked the valley's outlet and created a large lake. He noted signs of these buried lake beds, as well as lava flows that formed the prominent peaks of Antelope and Rich Hill. Over time, erosion partially restored the valley's original shape, though it has yet to reach the same depth as in ancient times. Nicole observed, "There's a buried channel beneath the current valley floor, cutting through exposed rims of the old channel in several places. These rims are schistose rocks, perfect for trapping gold." Nicole speculated that some sections of bedrock in the deepest parts of the old channel could contain gold worth over $80 per cubic yard. So, why hasn't this potential treasure trove been mined? Veteran field engineer Glenn Walker of the Arizona Department of Mineral Resources explains that the challenge has always been financial. Nobody with the funds to tackle the problems here has ever committed to it. Without adequate funding, you either need a miracle or you go broke. Walker has tried to convince developers to install a long conveyor system in the narrow creek bed to move the massive boulders obstructing access. "That's the richest placer in Arizona, maybe in the entire Southwest," he said. "I'm convinced no one's ever reached true bedrock, and anyone in mining knows that's where the big gold is." Walker remains uncertain whether mining the area would be financially feasible, noting, "We can't see how deep the boulders go, but there's likely only about 5% gravel down there. And if you can reach it, there's plenty of water for mining." He added, It's the lack of water and those huge boulders that have kept Rich Hill's treasure hidden since 1882. In the searing midday heat, the procession of pack mules seemed to sway in a mirage-like dance as the smugglers' caravan trudged along the narrow canyon floor. This route was a favorite for Mexican pack mules to evade customs on their way to trade in Tucson and other destinations. Unbeknownst to the weary vaqueros leading the mules on that July day in 1881, their journey would leave a grisly legacy, earning the route the haunting name of Skeleton Canyon. Winding through the rugged Peloncillo Mountains from New Mexico's Animas Valley to San Simon, Arizona, Skeleton Canyon bordered Old Mexico and San Luis Pass to the south. A mile south of San Simon, the canyon widened into a serene vega shaded by towering rocks known as Devil's Kitchen. From the top of these rocks, hidden from view, a group of men waited impatiently for the approaching pack train, their eyes fixed on the trail below. As the mules approached, laden with bulging aparejos, one of the men grumbled about the delay, wiping sweat from his brow with a damp sleeve. Curly Bill Brocius, leading the armed greeting party, assured his companion John Ringo of the impending reward. The gang on the heated rocks included Old Man Clanton and his sons, Ike and Billy, along with Tom and Frank McLaury, Joe Hill, Jim Hughes, Charlie Thomas, and Charlie Snow. At the head of the train rode a young Mexican who envisioned the profits awaiting him in Tucson, where he would exchange his money for goods to sell back home. But his thoughts of rest and revelry in Tucson were abruptly interrupted by the sight of a lone rider ahead. Curly Bill, appearing casual, approached the Mexican leader with a greeting in Spanish, his dark features often mistaken for those of a local. After a seemingly friendly exchange, Curly Bill took his leave and rode south past the mules. But as he passed the last animal, he turned quickly in the saddle and a pistol appeared in his hand. 2 shots rang out, shocking the vaqueros as 2 of their comrades fell to the ground. Curly Bill's gunfire served as the grim signal for the ambush to commence. Rifles cracked from the rocky outcrop, claiming 2 more lives among the Mexican riders. Amidst the chaos, the caravan erupted into a panicked stampede. Wounded animals screamed as they bolted in all directions, trampling over the fallen and helpless men lying in their path. Amidst the turmoil, a young lad managed to crawl through the grass, finding refuge near the south side of the ambush site. Stealthily inching along, he reached a bend in the trail and made a desperate dash for the border, the sole survivor of the massacre. Meanwhile, the hidden assailants mercilessly gunned down the remaining caravan members, their scattered shots finishing off the wounded. Some of the gang members swiftly set to work, stripping the heavy packs from the backs of the fallen mules, while others rode off in pursuit of the escaped animals. Eventually, the laden beasts were discovered grazing peacefully in the San Simon Valley, while the body of the young caravan leader lay lifeless near the mouth of the canyon, a dark bloodstain marking his demise. The slaughtered Mexicans were left where they fell, their bleached bones serving as a haunting reminder of the canyon's grisly moniker. The plunder, totaling $75,000, was divided among the gang, who squandered their ill-gotten gains in the saloons of Charleston and Galeyville. A month later, Jim Hughes returned from Sonora with vital intelligence on another smuggling operation. Despite Curly Bill's absence, the gang resolved to strike again, this time intercepting a pack outfit on its way to Tucson. The ambush, led by Hughes and his associates, proved successful, with 3 more Mexican riders falling to their rifles. In the ensuing chaos, Hughes was wounded, but the bandits managed to seize the valuable cargo, discovering a cache of silver coins and gold bars worth a staggering sum. Recognizing the impracticality of transporting the treasure on their small cow ponies, the gang opted to conceal it within the canyon, intending to retrieve it later with a team and wagon. They buried the loot near the canyon's entrance, beneath the shade of 3 oak trees. Jim Hughes's injury turned out to be minor, and after a few days, he and several others returned to the site with a hired Mexican driver and a wagon. The treasure was loaded onto the wagon and transported to Davis Mountain, where it was reburied in a pit already rumored to hold a substantial amount of loot from previous raids into Mexico, attributed to Billy Grounds and Zwing Hunt. In a grim turn, the Mexican driver was fatally compensated for his services. The fate of the treasure remains a subject of speculation, with some believing it still lies beneath the oaks. However, what is certain is the grim aftermath. the remains of 19 men and numerous mules left to decay under the Arizona sun. Cowboys in the area have stumbled upon old silver coins, suggesting the presence of hidden wealth. Reports of supernatural occurrences in the canyon abound, with sightings of mysterious lights and eerie sounds. Some attribute these phenomena to the restless spirits of those who lost their lives guarding the treasure, while others offer more mundane explanations, such as natural sounds or phenomena like will-o'-the-wisps. Following the ambush of the second pack train, Zwing Hunt and Billy Grounds found themselves embroiled in the Stockton Ranch fight, culminating in Grounds' death and Hunt's severe injury. Later, reports surfaced of Hunt's demise at the hands of Indians, with his body identified by witnesses. Hunt was laid to rest beneath a juniper tree in a desolate Arizona canyon, his name etched into the bark. With the deaths of Grounds and Hunt, the mystery surrounding the Skeleton Canyon treasure deepened. Despite reports of Hunt's survival and subsequent demise, his alleged confession regarding the stolen loot and its fate adds another layer to the legend. Hunt's uncle emerged later with a map purportedly sketched by his nephew just before his demise. He also claimed to have received verbal directives from the dying outlaw regarding the whereabouts of the hidden treasures. Reportedly, Hunt stated, "We played cards in a cave at Davis Mountain. From there we could see into New Mexico." The map meticulously detailed the relative positions of crucial points essential for tracing the treasure pit. These included the charred remnants of a wagon, specific trails, a rock bearing 2 carved crosses, and ultimately, the treasure site itself. Armed with this map, the old man felt confident in his ability to uncover the buried riches, possessing all the details save one error. Hunt had neglected to disclose the route to Davis Mountain. The name and location of the mountain remained unfamiliar, even to lifelong residents of Arizona. Eventually, the map fell into the hands of Virgil Boucher, who happened to be Bill Grounds' brother. Boucher tirelessly pursued the elusive wealth for over 30 years, embarking on numerous expeditions across the Arizona mountains. Despite his unwavering faith in Hunt's map, every attempt to locate the treasure proved futile. Boucher passed away around 1924, still clinging to the enigmatic legend of outlaw gold. Bill Sanders, an early pioneer in the Turkey Creek region, dedicated many years to the quest for the buried loot, but found no trace of it. His son, Will, continues to receive inquiries from professional treasure hunters regarding his father's endeavors in the search. Overall, most Arizonians view the entire narrative with skepticism. Walter Noble Burns, in his book Tombstone, recounts the testimony of an old man from Paradise who claimed acquaintance with the actual perpetrators of the crime. According to him, only 6 individuals were involved, with Hunt and Grounds not among them. He further asserted that only $4,000 was stolen at Skeleton Canyon, primarily in counterfeit dollars. The mystery persists to this day. Did Zwing Hunt truly perish in Arizona, rendering the story of the map and buried treasure a figment of his uncle's imagination? Or did he survive long enough to draft the map, as attested by the elderly relative? One undeniable truth is that the legend endures. Each year, treasure hunters scour the canyons and mountains in search of the elusive cache, which has thwarted all attempts to uncover it in the nearly 90 years since the Skeleton Canyon massacre. Undoubtedly, the quest will persist. It is inherent in the romantic allure of treasure hunting that seekers cling to the belief that the cache remains undiscovered. And perhaps one day, a fortunate explorer will chance upon a fortune beyond their wildest dreams, the buried loot from Skeleton Canyon. Conceivably, that explorer could be you. Should you embark on this journey, your first task is to locate Davis Mountain. However, unfortunately, the existence and whereabouts of Davis Mountain have proven as elusive as the treasure itself. For years, the tale of the Skeleton Canyon massacre has captivated my imagination. As a history enthusiast and occasional prospector, I acknowledge that I could never aspire to uncover the grand treasure that has eluded dedicated hunters despite years of effort. In the past, I have contented myself with discovering lesser treasures such as ammunition cases, old spurs, and military buttons items imbued with historical significance. While these artifacts may hold little monetary value, the thrill of discovery has always been rewarding. The time came when my wife, Charlotte, and I resolved to test our luck at Skeleton Canyon. The idea of exploring the historic murder site for a few days filled us with excitement, so we loaded our camper with supplies and metal detectors and set off for Arizona, with Tombstone as our destination. Over the years, we had spent many vacations in this charming city and had built strong friendships there. Upon our arrival in Tombstone, we spotted Wayne Winters leaving his office. Wayne, the editor of the Tombstone Epitaph, the oldest continuously published newspaper in Arizona, was an old acquaintance. After sharing our plans with him, Wayne suggested we get in touch with Jack Hendrickson, a local businessman and former president of the Chamber of Commerce. Jack, a close friend of ours with unparalleled knowledge of local history, was often our go-to for historical insights. We found Jack in front of his Lucky Cuss restaurant and bar, engaged in what seemed like a lively conversation with his parrot Doc. After a warm reunion, Jack kindly drew us a map of Skeleton Canyon, expressing his desire to join us on our expedition, though business commitments prevented him from doing so. Next, we visited our friend Everett Brownsley, who was then serving as the city marshal of Tombstone, a position he no longer held. We found him at his desk in the old jail, and since the following day was his day off, he and his wife Millie agreed to accompany us to the massacre site, which was about 100 miles away. Early the next morning, we followed Highway 80 to the small hamlet of Apache. From there, a dirt road led us to the canyon. Passing by a couple of ranches, we finally reached the old Ross Sloan spread at the mouth of Skeleton Canyon. After another half-mile, we caught sight of the jagged rocks of Devil's Kitchen rising above the oak grove next to the creek bed below the location of the massacre site. The shaded area offered a welcome relief from the scorching Arizona sun, with patches of yellowed grass sparsely dotting the creek's edge. As we began our search armed with metal detectors, our excitement soared when we unearthed a long-lost adobe dollar dating back to 1864, seemingly linking us to the legend of Skeleton Canyon. Spreading out across the knoll, we continued our search. About 10 feet from the first find, another signal from the detector led us to discover a second adobe dollar dating back to 1878 near a small greasewood tree. Further up the knoll, Everett's detector signaled a significant find: a blackened coin and a .45 .70 rifle cartridge case, sparking his imagination about the stories they could tell if only they could speak. Amidst the bawling of cattle on the opposite side of the dry creek and the eerie sight of a steer's bleached bones, picked clean by scavengers, we meticulously combed the area with our metal detectors. Though initially unsuccessful, we persisted, moving to another section where my detector suddenly buzzed insistently. Digging beneath its head, I uncovered a heavy black disc buried about 3 inches deep in old Mexican coin. The old case, despite being badly flattened and corroded, was still a valuable addition to my home museum. The Mexican coin, dated 1875, held a particular allure. Over the next 2 hours, we meticulously combed the edge of the creek, hoping for further discoveries, but our efforts yielded no results. With the sun dipping below the horizon, we reluctantly agreed to make one final sweep before heading back to town. Just as we were on the verge of giving up, Everett's detector buzzed once more. Digging 4 inches beneath the surface, we unearthed yet another coin, this time dated 1880. The marshal's face lit up with joy, not because of the coin's monetary value, but due to its historical significance. With darkness descending, we begrudgingly accepted that it was time to leave the canyon behind. As we drove away, the truck's lights illuminated the whitened bones of the dead steer we had spotted earlier in the day. Though not the bones of a Mexican mule or a long-dead smuggler, their presence served as a haunting reminder of the gruesome event that had unfolded nearly 90 years prior. We often pondered the idea of spending the night in Skeleton Canyon, amidst the eerie silence of the old grove and the shadows lurking under the jagged rocks of Devil's Kitchen. Were the sounds we heard merely those of nocturnal animals, or could they be the restless spirits guarding the treasure that had cost so many lives? For nearly 4 centuries, the Southwest has been shaped by diverse cultures. Over this time, various peoples have gradually learned to coexist and understand each other's customs and beliefs. The Indian, Spaniard, Mexican, Spanish American, and Anglo have all contributed their distinct ways of life to the vibrant Southwest. Despite their differences, they share a common fascination: gold. The allure of lost mines and buried treasures captivates them all, defying stereotypes about American Indians and their interest in such legends. The story of a lost mine stirs emotions of nostalgia, desire, and escapism, adding a mysterious element, like an iron door hinting at ancient secrets, only heightens the intrigue, driving many to search the mountains. The mine with the iron door, central to this tale, is uniquely tied to Arizona and the historic city of Tucson. Although often considered legendary, enough credible information exists to make one wonder if immense riches lie hidden in the mountains surrounding Tucson. Research shows that many lost mine and treasure stories, whether real or legendary, have a historical basis, particularly in the picturesque desert and mountainous regions of southern Arizona. In the early 1920s, American novelist Harold Bell Wright published a nostalgic novel titled The Mine with the Iron Door, offering this wise counsel to treasure seekers. The treasures of life are not all hidden in a lost mine behind an iron door. While the book wasn't primarily about the legend of the mine, Wright used its setting to craft an engaging narrative, showcasing the region's charm. Wright wrote, "From every street and corner in Tucson we see the mountains. From our places of business, from our railway depots and hotels, from our university campus and halls, and from the windows and porches of our homes we look up to the mighty hills." He was referring to one of the greatest lost mine stories of all time, particularly the Santa Catalinas, which dominate the Tucson skyline with their bold peaks and beautiful canyons. As Wright described, these mountains have a timeless allure. Wright may have learned of the old mine during his time in Tucson, inspiring his novel. Whether he viewed the legend as fanciful or factual, many have felt the thrill of encountering history firsthand. Researchers often come across tantalizing clues in old newspapers and archives, making their hearts race with the possibility of unearthing hidden riches. One such headline, "Around the Old Mine," appeared in the Arizona Star on May 16, 1895. The paper reported the discovery of old records at Mission San Xavier del Bac, detailing a rich gold mine in the nearby Santa Catalina Mountains. These records revealed that the Jesuits had once operated the mine using Indian labor. According to the story, many had searched for this mine over the years, and last week a Mr. Gibson, who had been hunting, accidentally discovered it. Gibson informed the Star that his find was rich in visible ores, and after some digging, realized that the old tunnel was actually the entrance to the legendary mine with the iron door. He described the ancient opening as 9 feet tall and about 11 feet wide, large enough for mule trains to enter and haul out ores. The brief 1895 report concluded with the statement that the finder intended to develop his discovery. 15 years earlier, on March 4, 1880, the residents of Tucson were excited by a long story in the Star about the same old mine, stating it was located in the mountains above the city and was believed to be about 300 years old. Legend holds that the mine was initially discovered by the Indians in the Santa Catalinas, with Father Escalante, the Jesuit assistant to Father Kino at San Xavier del Bac, being the first white man to oversee its operation. The Papago Indians were thought to have originally opened the mine and worked it for several years under the Padres' supervision. Stories suggest that gold ore was transported down the Canyon of Gold to the mountain's base, where it was processed in ancient arrastras and smelted into crude gold bars, rich in trace minerals. These bars were then taken back into the mountains and hidden in a secret room sealed by a great iron door. As the shaft progressed inward, the vein grew richer. However, the Apaches eventually attacked, killing the Indian miners and their families, thus concealing the mine and the gold room behind the iron door. The 1895 report in the Star sparked the interest of many old-time prospectors and citizens of southern Arizona, but the 1880 report was so compelling that it may have ignited another rush for gold in the surrounding mountains. The editor questioned why people didn't venture into the mountains to dig up gold. This exciting report led a group of prospectors to search not only for the mine with the iron door, but also for the Casas Grandes of the Catalinas, the Nueva Vita Ciudad, or 9 Mile City. The Star mentioned that the group brought an ancient manuscript book with 400 handwritten pages detailing the old mine. This manuscript, valuable to antiquarians today, reported that 10 men once extracted 200 pounds of gold in a very short period, dating back to the Spanish era. In 1880, the party headed into the mountains, following instructions supposedly handed down from the Jesuits. They packed in from what was believed to be the site of the old smelter and arrastra, aiming to find the ancient city 9 miles up in the mountains. The Star reported that their waybill took them to Cañón del Oro, still visible on modern maps. From there, they proceeded on foot through the nearly impassable Middle Canyon, heading east, They camped the first night at Spring Canyon, described as a box-like canyon. 5 miles from this spring, they reached a fork and followed the right-hand canyon to another canyon with 3 sides. In this 3-sided canyon, they found a cave with a small opening, which they enlarged, allowing one of the party members to crawl inside and investigate. A flock of bats roared out, causing the men to suspend work momentarily until they regained their composure. Upon re-entering, the first man found that the small tunnel opened into a larger area adorned with Latin inscriptions. Despite their best efforts, none of the men could translate the writings. The walls bore clear evidence of human construction. Further down the shaft, they saw a faint light source, which turned out to be an ancient air shaft, likely cut centuries before. Gazing through this small opening, they were astonished to find themselves looking into the Arizona sunshine. 200 feet below lay a beautiful, long-hidden valley. The valley's rock-strewn floor was dotted with large trees, pines, oaks, and others. Although no lush grass was mentioned, it was undoubtedly a verdant place with green trees and a running trout stream. Using ropes, the men lowered themselves from the air shaft and headed east across the rocky, forested landscape of this newly discovered Shangri-La. According to the star, they then witnessed a sight that was hard to believe. The ruins of Nueva Mia Ciudad stood in the near distance, like ghostly fingers reaching for the sky. Indeed, they had found their 9-mile city, built centuries before by the ancient ones. It lay there in the Arizona sunlight, waiting for seekers of past mysteries and riches. Progress toward the city was slow, hindered by great boulders, fallen timber, and small arroyos. Upon reaching the valley's stream, they washed a pan of gravel, yielding $1 in gold dust, which excited the party. They stumbled through the brush and rocks until they reached the ruins, within a mile of their descent point. The city was about 2 miles wide and longer in length. Among the ruined houses, they found a large structure, possibly a church, built of quarried stone, likely marble or granite. Near this ruin, they discovered the mine with its ancient iron door. The hinges had rusted away, but the door still lay in the timbered opening. With great anticipation, they entered the shaft and found a 10-inch thick vein of gold-rich ore. As they dug, gold ore fell at their feet. The tunnel extended about 400 feet. After staking their claims and posting notices, they headed to Florence to file them. This news story was published many years before Wright wrote his novel. Another story emerged in 1895 when a man named Gibson supposedly found the old mine again. The lengthy report from March 4, 1880, about the hidden valley, the ruined city, and the old mine with the iron door, appears to be a straightforward news story, with no indication of it being a hoax. No further reports in the paper suggested the story was a hoax, nor was it reported on April Fool's Day. It could have been a tale by would-be prospectors to raise funds or support their ventures. Nonetheless, it captivated the citizens of Old Tucson and beyond. If these stories hold truth, a mine thought to be the mine with the iron door was found in 1880 and perhaps lost again, or disappointed its finders, and was rediscovered in 1895. Bits of ancient wood found in the Catalinas in the 1930s might have come from the old timbers of the iron door. Harold Bell Wright's novel suggested that many, even from Spain, had searched for the mine, only to be unsuccessful. Wright's hero in his novel found gold behind the iron door with the help of an Indian guardian, but gave it up for the love of an orphan girl. The ruins of an old settlement were said to be above Steam Pump Ranch, where the Papagos worked the mine for the priests. According to the story, the mine was sealed when they left. Many have dug for gold in Cañón del Oro, with hundreds of holes left by prospectors hoping to strike it rich. If the ruins of Nueva Mia Ciudad and the mine with the iron door truly exist, they might lie hidden in a deep, verdant valley, accessible only through a tunnel from a 3-sided canyon. The riches of the mine might still be there, untouched, or it could be a pleasant dream in the land of sunshine and casual living, the Great Southwest. As a parting note, Arizona, A Guide to the Grand Canyon State, compiled by the Works Progress Administration in the 1930s, stated, however, the only living person who has received any treasure from the mine with the iron door is Harold Bell Wright, who used that name for the title of one of his books. Feeling the dry and preserving air of the Arizona desert, listening to the silence that seems always on the verge of being broken, and seeing the barbed saguaro sentries standing guard, It's not hard to believe the ghost stories one sometimes hears. If the ghost story involves a Texan's hidden treasure, all the better. And if the stories are verified by others, things get even more interesting. When the tale is fresh, with today's telling, it's worth paying close attention, especially if the storyteller, a local Mexicano, claims to know where the treasure is. Many stories circulate about the treasure of El Tahano, and anyone who takes the time to visit the archives at the University of Arizona will find that these stories share many similarities. The best story comes from Alejandro Heredia, who lives on the outskirts of Tucson. His tale combines all the elements of the other versions, and he not only knows where the treasure is, but also what has happened to those who have encountered it. If you stay around Cerro Delgado until after dark, you might hear El Tahano riding his horse down to the waterhole. Many ranchers and cowboys in these parts have heard his spirit on this trail. They always hear him after dark, but never in the daytime. I myself have heard him 3 times. He rides through the rocks and mesquite thickets, and after dark, he heads down to the water to drink. You can hear the hoofbeats, the horse chomping the bit, and El Tahano's spurs jingling. When he reaches the water, the hoofbeats stop, and the spurs fall silent. Yes, I have heard him 3 times. El Tahano was a bold, ruthless bandit who roamed this part of the country about 100 years ago. He held up and robbed stagecoaches at various places. One of his favorite spots for holdups was Picacho Pass, northwest of Tucson. Another was the pass at Cerro Delgado for the stage to Sasabe. There were other locations too. He had a partner who stayed in town and informed him when a stagecoach was coming through with money in the strongbox. Eventually, he amassed so much treasure that he had to hide it, and people have been searching for it ever since. This bandit was as crafty and sneaky as he was bold. He sometimes had his horse's shoes put on backwards so that the posse would trail him in the wrong direction. Some locals called him the Cat because he was as elusive as a wildcat. He was a formidable man, and that's why they named Cat Mountain after him, because he robbed the stage there and sometimes wore a mask that looked like a cat's face. El Tahano sent a man into town to have his horse shod. The sheriff suspected the man, so they caught him and threatened, "If you don't show us where he is, we are going to kill you." The man led the police to a thicket of bamboo cane near the Santa Cruz River south of Tucson. There they found a man asleep in the thicket, and the police shot him with a shotgun meant for bears. The man was mortally wounded and should have been dead, but he raised up, pulled his pistol and said, "I am much of a man." This scared the posse, so they went back to town for more help. When they returned about 2 hours later, they found him dead in the thicket. So the spirit of El Tahano still rides this trail, and you can hear the jingling of his spurs and the hoofbeats of his horse as he rides down to the water. His spirit will keep riding, doing penance for his misdeeds, until someone finds all of his buried treasure and releases him from his penance. El Tahano rode a black horse, but he also had a gray one for a change. Once there was a Yaqui man who used to go to Cerro Delgado to cut wood. Several times he saw a black horse ride down to the waterhole and then disappear. One time, I worked with a carpenter who found a lot of treasure in a cave around Cerro Delgado. While the carpenter was in the cave gathering the treasure, the ghost of El Tahano appeared and pointed at the carpenter, saying, "You take all of it or none." This frightened the carpenter greatly. Knowing he couldn't take all of the treasure, he hurried out of the cave and went home. He died 3 days later from a fever and chills. Another time, a cowboy riding the range came upon a cave. Curious, he went inside and found a treasure. He began filling the pockets of his chaps with gold pieces. Suddenly the ghost appeared and in a loud voice said, "All or nothing." Terrified, the cowboy began taking the gold out of his pockets, knowing he couldn't take it all. He then ran out of the cave and rode away. About a week later, he was out riding with some other cowboys. While they were camped, he asked to borrow a rifle to hunt a rabbit. They heard a shot, and when he didn't return, they went to look for him. They found him dead, with a bullet hole in his head. He had shot himself. When they searched his body, they found 2 of El Tahano's gold pieces in his pocket, which he had failed to remove when he was in the cave. Back in the 20s, a Yaqui who lived in Twin Buttes sometimes came home with lots of money. One time in 1925, he came to Tucson and took some of us to Cerro Delgado, where he showed us a big crack in the rocks. It was said that El Tahano used to drop his money into the crack, so that if he ever needed it, he could blast the crack open and get his money. We blasted some of the rocks away but found no money. I think the treasure is still there, but the hole needs to be blasted out more. Other tales generally agree that the treasure is at Picacho Pass or near Cerro Delgado. The storytellers also concur on the dire consequences for those who find the treasure but cannot take all of it. If the legends of Tahano's treasure were merely ghost stories, there might be no need to search. However, treasure hunters have pursued riches based on far less reliable information than Alejandro's story. Backing up the legends are solid facts about the man who became the ghost. His name was William Brazelton, and he terrorized the Tucson and New Mexico area in the 1870s by robbing stagecoaches. Brazelton posed as a respectable worker in a livery stable when he wasn't relieving stagecoaches of their gold. He had a friend, Dave Nemitz, who provided information about shipments and schedules. It was the same friend who betrayed Brazelton to the Tucson sheriff, Sheriff Chabelle, leading to Brazelton's ambush near the Santa Cruz River. The bandit's body was displayed for a time so that citizens could get a look at him. That the ghost of Tahano and Brazelton are one and the same has already been verified. Newspaper accounts of Brazelton's capture indicate that the treasure is still waiting to be found somewhere in the Tucson area. But remember Alejandro's warning about the gold: take all or nothing.